Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves.
How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my overview of the Fourth World Omnibus Volume 2 from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So, what we're looking at here is the Fourth World Omnibus Volume 2. This is a continuation of the stories found in the Fourth World by Jack Kirby Omnibus. And I'm glad that they decided just to call it Volume 2, even though the first one doesn't have a Volume 1. As a matter of fact, let's take a quick look at both of these books together. The Fourth World logo is kept for this omnibus down here. They look like they shifted the Kirby crackle down here just to put omnibus, but they give credit to Jerry Conway, Jack Kirby, Paul Levitz, Paul Cooperberg, Don Newton, and Keith Giffen. They take the top billing for creators that wrote Andrew the stories in this particular omnibus. Again, you have Darkseid, you have Orion, and a couple of the other new gods, but let's check out what this would look like on your shelf right next to your Fourth World Omnibus by Jack Kirby, with Big Barda's beautiful, beautiful face there, and then this time around, just equally as beautiful, I guess, Darkseid. No Jack Kirby up here. That's the Chip Kid design, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And probably because even though it's the Fourth World, and even though he does some of the stories in there, it's really not that many. It's probably about a total of, I want to say 7 or 8 stories collected in here with his artwork. And then the backs of each of the books right here. And something you probably notice is how much thicker Volume 1 is. Now, of course, there's two variables at play. Volume 1 had 1,536 pages. Volume 2 has 1,334 pages. So that is something big that could make it a lot slimmer. Even though it's not really a lot slimmer. It is slimmer, though. The other thing is the paper stock, too. This new omnibus is using the paper stock that they have been using in deluxe editions and in recent omnis. And much like Marvel, it's a thinner paper stock. Marvel has been doing that for the last couple of years now. And honestly, it's case by case, though, with Marvel. This, for the most part, feels about the same kind of thickness. It's not as glossy. It doesn't feel like matte paper. It almost feels like satin paper. But I'll do a closer little comparison. Not really a comparison, but a closer inspection when I open this up. And underneath the dust jacket, of course, with Chip Kid, you have this design right here of Orion. And this time around, it's quite a treat, actually. It's an actual piece of art with the Justice League against the new designs of the Parademons. And of course, Kirby really didn't do much Justice League outside of covers. So we're going to be seeing exactly what that is. Now, one other thing that is collected in here is this deluxe edition right here. This is the Legion of Superheroes, The Great Darkness Saga. That storyline is collected in here. Why am I not showing you the cover? Because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Even though the story is over 40 years old, it's still such a badass story. So we're going to crack this open and check out the artwork in here, talk about the stories collected in here, and also check out the back matter and what kind of extras it has, and look at the build. And of course, talk about the content. Okay, let's go ahead and crack this book open. You have your end sheets right there, your title page, the Fourth World Omnibus Volume 2. Your credits over here, you have the amazing and legendary people like Dennis O'Neil, Marv Wolfman, and Jerry Conway, Paul Levitz, Paul Cooperberg, Jack Kirby coming back with Joey Calaveri and Keith Giffen, and then pencilers like Don Newton, Keith Giffen himself, Jack Kirby himself, Adrian Gonzalez, Ernie Chan, Howard Bender, and Pat Broderick, Larry Malstead, Greg Theakston, Dan Adkins, Pablo Marcos, as some of the inkers here. The color is Carl Gafford, Jerry Serpe, Joe Orlando, Elizabeth Safian, and then your letters like Ben Oda, John Costanza, and Albert de Guzman, with a bunch of other people. Your table of contents right here with a brand new introduction from Paul Levitt. And the table of contents is awesome. I love table of contents like this, where they tell you the title of the story. So you actually get the title of the story, where the issue originated from, and what date, and the cover artist, the plotter, and the dialogue, unless it's just the writer, of course, and artist, unless it's the penciler and inker, colorist, and letterers at the time. This is just so nice, and it's packed full. And this introduction by Paul Levitz is awesome, talking about how comic book writers are some of the luckiest people on the planet, and borrowing toys that other people have. So it's like borrowing someone else's toys and getting to play with them. And it's an amazing way of putting it. And who else's toys would you like to borrow other than Jack Kirby? So it sets up what this is right here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, this was written in August of 2023, so it was before his collaborator on the Darkness Saga, Keith Giffen, passed away. And one more thing, if you've never read the Darkness Saga, or if you haven't read some of the stories in here, stay away from the introduction here, the forward by Paul Levitz, because there are some twists and turns that happen within those stories that he might spoil for you. And it's because these stories are old, right? And most people are like, who cares? And I agree with that. Who cares? But there's always someone new to all of this. And I learned many years ago to try to be as spoiler free as I can. So what is collected in here? This collects Mr. Miracle 19 through 25, The New Gods 12 through 19, Adventure Comics 459 and 460, Brave and the Bold 112, 128, and 138, DC Comics Presents number 12, First Issue Special number 13, which is what kicks off this omnibus, Justice League 183 to 185, Legion of Superheroes 290 to 294, Legion of Superheroes Annual number 3. So it's not really the entire deluxe edition of the Darkness Saga, but it's the big chunk of story that you need. Secret Society of Supervillains 1 through 5, Superpowers 1 through 5, Volume 2 of Superpowers 1 through 6, Volume 3 of Superpowers 1 through 4, Superpowers Collection 13 through 23, Super Team Family number 15, and then stories from DC Special Series number 10 at Legion of Superheroes 287. And the book retails for $125, and it has 1,334 pages. So what kicks this off? What is going on with the Fourth World? Well, at this point, Jack Kirby has pretty much left these characters and focused more on Commandy or his other titles at DC, and eventually would return back to Marvel. So it's up to other creators to come and play with these characters. This is Orion, and he has a new costume right off the bat. He's fighting Calabac, and he's looking for the character of Darkseid. So you still have opposing odds here of the New Gods and of New Genesis, and you have the Apocalypse crew. But Darkseid has other plans. I love the fact that they're putting these stories in chronological order. So you have some Jim Aparo stories in here where Batman teams up with another one of the world's greatest escape artists, and that is Mr. Miracle. And it's a two-part story, takes him to Egypt. And then you actually have the Mr. Miracle comics collected in here. So basically, what these comics are keeping these Fourth World characters going and letting other writers and other pencilers and inkers and colorists have a dab at them. Now, when you hear Fourth World and you see stories like the Secret Society of Supervillains, by the way, these were so freaking fun. I've never read these stories. These are by Jerry Conway and by Pablo Marcos. And when you have stories like this, and they're talking about, so these villains are getting together, and they have somebody that's gathering them. Captain Comet makes an appearance. You kind of figure out, because you're talking about the Fourth World, who is kind of behind all of this and who's putting them together as a supervillain team. There's Mantis right there. But it doesn't matter. Like, if you've never read, I've never read them, and they were still a lot of fun. And the stories continue for quite a while. And it's just fun to see characters like the Justice League, like Green Lantern, and Captain Comet deal with characters like Darkseid. But Orion is interesting that he got this new costume written by Jerry Conway and Don Newton and Dan Adkins doing a lot of the artwork. You also have other characters in here that were introduced through the pages of the New Gods. Like you have Black Racer that shows up, and of course, characters like Metron and Forager, which we see right here. Lonar, Light Ray shows up, and then we have some newer characters too, like Jezebel. So the basic story of the Return of the New Gods is that Darkseid has set his eyes on planet Earth, and he wants to invade planet Earth by capturing these 6 people who are believed to have portions, each one of them, of the anti-life equation. So now the New Gods, so 6 of these New Gods that I mentioned a little bit earlier, kind of split up and seek out these 6 human beings before Darkseid can get to them. Meanwhile, the stories of Mr. Miracle are about how Granny Goodness ends up kidnapping Big Barda, and Mr. Miracle has to put on the costume of Mr. Miracle once more. So Scott Free is back wearing these particular costumes. So these stories originated in the late 70s, as you can go back and see here, because I love, like, a trip back, so they tell you exactly when these were originally published. So 76, 77. This is the Super Team Family Presents right here, which has the Light Ray and Flash storyline. So it's interesting how they kind of shoehorn some of these characters in. Now, we know some series like the Forever People got canceled, and unfortunately, New Gods also ends up getting canceled, as well as Mr. Miracle. So this is the final New Gods issue right here. And it's cool to see Darkseid with a cape. Didn't really see him with a cape that often. And this is the final Mr. Miracle issue. Now, the stories were supposed to continue. Mr. Miracle sets up, like Oberon's back as well, sets up another adventure. However, it got canceled, so all you got was the cover here by Michael Golden, and that's the only thing that exists from Mr. Miracle number 26. But what they were able to do was take the storylines and try to wrap them up in new series like these adventure comics right here. Even though the New Gods just play a small part in this, it's still continuing the stories that were set up in those issues that were, I assume they were supposed to be canceled, so they kind of split them up because this was an anthology series. Like, they don't even make the cover right here. Oh no, there they are. A new story of the New Gods. And then you still have characters like Mr. Miracle show up, teaming up with Superman. There is a really freaking awesome story right here. This was fun, and I guess this is kind of Bronze Age though, so maybe I spoke too soon. I had never read these stories right here, and this is 183 to 185, where the Justice League and some of the Justice Society teams up to fight against the characters from Apocalypse. And of course, they team up with some of the New Gods right here. So it's really cool. Plus, you get some beautiful artwork in the second issue right here by George Perez. Beautiful right there. So George Perez becomes the artist during this particular era right here. So it's cool to see a big, oh my god, that's gorgeous. Beautiful splash page. And there's a lot of beautiful splash pages. And it's really, really interesting to see just how many of these folks were inspired by the king himself. So not only are they using his characters, but you can see the inspiration in their own artwork. And even though it's really cool to see their own take on the New Gods. So that's an awesome storyline that I had never read. Now, this is the one that I have read, and this is the Prologue to Darkness. And this sets up the events that are going to come in the Darkness Saga, which is a Legion of Superhero story. Now, I'm not going to spoil it in case you haven't read it. If you haven't, oh my gosh, you are in for a treat. Especially since you don't have the deluxe edition. All the trade paperbacks and all the deluxe editions, they ruin the freaking twist on the cover. So it's cool that it's collected like this. All you have to know is that these characters exist in the 30th century. Not the 31st, not now, not during this time. And there's a ton of characters. And during this particular time, there's some drama going on. Strongly recommend reading like the Paul Levitz hardcovers that have come out. I think No, I think those volume 2 might be out of print. So sorry, ignore that. But this was kind of like my first Legion of Superheroes story I read. You just have to know that they're superheroes inspired by 80s superheroes and actually 60s superheroes really and 70s superheroes. And Superboy gets to hang out with them. Now, of course, this is before Crisis on Infinite Earths, so that is really Superboy that will eventually become Superman. And he gets pulled, and so does Supergirl. Man, they have like a freaking hell of a team. They've got them, they've got Mon-El, and who is Ultra Boy? I mean, all these characters that are super powered, and they're going to need them. So what's happening in this particular storyline is that there's a darkness that is gathering villains from their past. And these villains are already super powered, and they're also gathering artifacts to become this omnipotent being. And it's really interesting where the story goes, especially since this is set in the 30th century. And like I said, if you haven't read it, you can find out for yourself how it ends and how it wraps up. Now, one of the coolest things about this omnibus is that for the first time, we have original pages collected from the Great Darkness saga instead of the trade paperback pages. And when I was reading this, I thought, well, that looks a little different. And sure enough, in the extras in the back, which I'll show you, they talk about how for the first time these pages are collected again and in omnibus format. So this isn't what's collected in the deluxe edition, for example. A couple of years later, annual number 3 touches upon some of the stories in the Darkness saga, and that's why it's also in here. Now, you have the Superpowers collection, and there's a wonderful introduction by Alan Burnett talking about how the stories came to be. But this is the return of Jack Kirby in an interesting non-canon story. So really quick, Superpowers was kind of like season 4 of Super Friends. They retitled it to Superpowers. If you ever watched Super Friends, the Saturday morning cartoon. And they started introducing new villains. And a lot of those new villains were from the Fourth World. Because they noticed, mainly the toy lines, didn't have that big villain that like Marvel Comics did. Like besides the Batman and Flash rogue gallery, there weren't a lot of villains that could take on the Justice League. So that's why Jack Kirby got involved and redesigned a lot of the characters for the toy line. So you'll see them looking a little bit different. And even though this isn't canon, it doesn't take place in the main continuity. It's kind of in the Super Friends continuity in a way, because I noticed that they just call each other's like the characters call themselves Flash, Superman, Batman. They don't call themselves by their names. Robin. Like normally Bruce and Robin, when they're alone, he would call him, at this time it would have been Jason Todd, or I guess Jason Todd. Yeah. But what's really cool about this is that Jack Kirby came back to write the stories. And then, after issue number 4, he comes in not only to write the story, but also draw the story. So it's wicked to see him come back and also draw the Justice League. Now, Greg Theakston is the inker on here. And when you look at the back, there's some extras, and wonderful extras at that. You'll see how many changes he made to Jack Kirby's art. He was one of these inkers from the old school days, that more of an embellisher, more changing up the art style to kind of make it look like his own art style. And a lot of inkers do that. But it's really interesting to see the comparison between a Jack Kirby penciled page and one that is inked. And Jack Kirby came back for the second storyline, and now Paul Kuperberg is writing the stories, but he gets to draw Darkseid, and he gets to draw Darkseid against the Justice League. Look at this ad right here. This is Calabac. So this is kind of like the toy versions, and when I talked about the cover, when I said, oh, it's them against the Parademons, they were redesigned, because when you're looking at a Saturday morning slot, the network was like, well, this needs to be something friendly for kids that get up early in the morning, and also young or older kids too. So somewhere in the middle. So Darkseid's design had to be redesigned. Sad's walking around with this big machine right here. But it's so cool to see Jack Kirby drawing the Justice League and getting to play with Darkseid. And I think I want to say this was drawn after the graphic novel that wrapped up a lot of the Fourth World stuff, the Hunger Dogs. I think this was drawn after that, because I think DC sat on that for a little bit. But it's just really cool to see Jack Kirby come in and get to draw Darkseid one more time, along with a lot of the characters that he created. Plus, you get the Justice League in there. Not canon, but still awesome. And there's 6 issues of that in this book. This was previously collected in the Jack Kirby Omnibus. So if you have that, that has been collected before. And then we get the 3rd volume, this one here, Superpowers Volume 3. And this one is drawn by Carmine Infantino. Paul Cooperberg writing the stories in this one too. But this one focuses more on the new characters like Firestorm and Samurai and Pharaoh. But also has Fourth World characters showing up. And it's collected in its entirety. I don't think this was collected in the Jack Kirby Omnibus. But let me know if I'm wrong, please. And then there's the little short comics back here that came with the toys. But unfortunately the toys didn't do that well. So the line was canceled. I think there was supposed to be 4 waves, and the 4th wave got canceled. So if it features a Fourth World character, they collected in here, even though they focus on somebody like Red Tornado, for example, because there's a Fourth World character that appears there. And then you have the Mother box files. So this is all the extras. So you have excerpts right here from the History of the DC Universe 1 and 2. And then this is really cool. This is from the original release of the Secret Society of Supervillains #1. And it had to be redrawn later on. So this is Rick Estrada's pencils. And the whole issue is collected in here. And this is what I was talking about right here. This is the editor's note. The story of Leaders and Lovers was redrawn for the Legion of Superheroes Great Darkness Saga trade paperback. This redrawn version of the story featured here has remained in print ever since, while the original, as seen on page 677, was never printed again until this collection. That is a hell of an extra to include. So you have both versions included in here. And then you have ads right here for the different characters, the Superpowers promotional poster, and the Lost Big Barda backup comic feature. And letter pages from the Superpower comics. And I'm skipping a couple of pages because it's the covers to the Great Darkness Saga. This is really cool. This talks about the toys, and this is where I learned about the toy line that Wave 4 unfortunately got canceled. And this was the really hard wave to find because the numbers were so small for the orders. So you have the Superpowers action figures, Wave 1, 2, and 3. Darkseid with a cape, man, that's cool. And I guess the Parademon comic versions were deemed too scary. And this was the prototype because the Tower of Darkness playset never got made. And then concept art for other characters that were supposed to appear, like the Black Racer or Quadrex. And there's the Executioner, and this is freaking awesome right here. The Superpower toy designs by Jack the King Kirby himself. So they do have original art back here. They have some original pages, such as this right here, the cover. This is what I was talking about, the final inks. So what's really cool is that the covers, when something was inked, a lot of the inkers usually inked a photocopy of Jack Kirby's pages. So that's why they have a lot of the original pencils here. And you can definitely tell the difference between this and when it was inked. So there is a lot of that back here. These are all digital archives. And lots of original pages. Mainly the King's pages too, so that's cool. So if you're looking, unfortunately, for somebody else's art through here, like original Jim Aparo artwork, that's not back here. And then the biographies on these wonderful creators. 1,334 pages. And this, like I mentioned, compared to the original omnibus that has that thick, glossy paper stock, this one has more of a, like I said, like a satin finish to it. It's not glossy, but it's also not matte paper. It feels like that paper stock that they've used for their deluxe editions. So it's a little bit thinner, so you get more of a bleed through coming from the opposite side. You know, we've seen that in Marvel Omnis as well. And just looking at the way the book lays over, there is some minor gutter loss. happening. And mainly due to the eye. And again, just minor bleed through. It's usually when it's light colors or whites. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, if you already have Volume 1, or if you have the Fourth World by Kirby in absolute format, yet still picking this up. And what you've thought about some of the stories in here. And if you've never read the Darkness Saga, I hope you're in for a treat, because I really enjoyed it. But that's it, everybody. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Check us out on Patreon and Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.